Run record. I'm hoping by January. They won't replace them all. So it is a setting that they need to do on your computer.
Yeah, it's those green boxes.
Oh yeah.
They have those green boxes too. They just gotta.
Right. Okay. At 6:30, we'll get started here. For any of you guys who've been watching this online, a couple people have had trouble viewing the image from the camera because the camera down there, and obviously right up here on this image, and people at home or at work and wherever they are on a job site can view this and see the presenter if you do it right, if you click the right buttons. So if you don't have that image, and if you're listening saying, how come I don't have it, just go off to the right side and push the menu button, and it'll pop out and give you that option. I'm going to close this file, right? I just minimize? Yeah. I would say. Okay. This week's code of conduct item of the week is to strive to maintain a positive professional image of ECI to our employees, our clients, our vendors, and our subs, and the public. So just looking at myself here, I'm thinking my vest isn't too bad, but some of you guys might have a dirty vest. Probably Matt could swap you out with a nice, clean, sharp-looking vest if it's getting a little greasy and dirty. Now, Gene, just because you came in a nice, sharp, clean-looking vest, don't go picking on everyone else. All right, let's see. I'll get down here. We're going to do aerial lifts here in a few moments. Corporate announcements, we have a couple new employees, Sten Holm and Mike Roselli. Sten or Mike here? Okay.
Mike's in Reigate.
All right. Well, welcome if you guys are watching. Welcome aboard, and hopefully everyone can get a chance to introduce themselves to the new guys. And weekend again, still really important in the summertime to secure all our job sites because there's a lot of people out walking around causing trouble, especially on weekends. So technical tips here. We've been talking about horizontal curves in transportation engineering. And we do a lot of curves, whether you realize it or not. In fact, in Berlin, we've been doing some... Gary's got a headache. His head's exploding from the thought of curves and super elevation. It's so intense on that job. But anyway, we've been talking about horizontal curves, and last week we talked about super elevation and how with a curve, a horizontal curve, you match a super elevation to that curve. Now, if you think about it, you come into a straight tangent, you don't have any super elevation. You typically crown the road, and you transition to that super elevation. So the transition, especially going right to a horizontal curve, would be difficult. So they have what they call a spiral curve often at the beginning and end of the curve. And that's a time when actually the radius changes, starts out at an infinite length at the tangent end and then shortens up to this radius. And what that does, it allows you to have a gradual super elevation change into your curve. It's called a spiral. And a spiral, remember a spiral, I had to look up the definition myself. Spiral is a curve that starts at an infinite or, well, let's say at an infinite radius. You could go backwards, but an infinite radius, very long on that tangent, and then changes. And a nautilus, remember the nautilus shell? That's one of nature's spirals. It has, it goes big and then tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and a little sea creature lives in it. So same thing, borrowed that from nature, use it for horizontal curves. I showed the same pictures we had last week. It's obviously difficult to see actual spirals. Maybe you could from a good aerial view, but this does show the super elevation, and you kind of could tell that on the tangent section, the tracks will be level, and then there's a transition. And obviously, especially on railroad, you wouldn't want it to go like this. It'd be quite a bump. So you have that transition through the spiral. And I attached a link to the VTrans Route Survey Manual, which is actually where I took that from their manual. And it describes layout and survey for curves and everything related to survey. So this week we're profiling the Vermont Gas Systems Addison Natural Gas Project, the expansion transmission line, where we're doing the horizontal directional drilling. There's a total footage of around 21,000 feet of 12-inch diameter steel transmission pipe, all done by HDD, for roughly 18 drills across the project. And we just recently started the Essex-Colchester sand plain area with 2 separate back-to-back drills, essentially. We're drilling from the center on one and from the outer on the other, but then we're going to turn the further drill out and we'll be pulling in towards the center. And this is for the sand plains, a protected area, we'll talk about it in a moment, and the Indian Brook tributaries that cut through the area. And we're drilling a pilot hole for the drill number 1, the longer one is 2,340 foot long drill with the 330 by 500 maxi rig. The drill has a maximum thrust pull of 330,000, so quite a bit, with a torque of 50,000. And the drill is supported by the Tulsa Rig Iron MCS 1000 reclaimer and pump system. And the reclaimer is rated for 500 to 700 gallons a minute, and the pump is rated for up to 700 gallons a minute continuous duty. Altogether, that combined package has around 1,300 horsepower. A lot of horsepower. The pump system, the pilot hole guidance system consists of a traditional wireline system, and that's provided and operated by this guy Mike Owens, who's a subcontractor. His company is called North American Wireline. And here we are putting a section of steel up. Unlike our other drills, you manually load the steel off of a trailer in this case with a boom on the machine, drop it in, and then it's similar to the regular drills that we're used to. And this is roughly a 30-foot long steel. The length varies. Not turning here. There we go. And here we're doing some of the fluid tests, the plasticity, plastic yield, plastic viscosity, and the yield strength, and a marsh cone test. And this guy Dan here is from Power Mow. He's a mud guru. And there's the, not turning here. Here we go. The Tulsa rig. 2 engines on this, one for the pump, the main pump right there. On the far side, there's a generator that's running all the electric pumps on the reclaimer. And on the drill number 2, which is the one further towards Route 2A, we're drilling out with the 1,700 foot bore. We're drilling out with the 40-20 all-terrain, and we're starting out as a rock hole. We anticipate it's going to get out of the rock at some point, and then we'll finish it with a different drill. We're also using, in this case, we're using a walkover guidance system, F5 Digitrack. So you can see that's the sand plains area dropping right down to the main branch of the Indian Brook. And then this is the pipe laydown area at the Severance roadside. There's quite a farmer's field area there, and then this lower area is considered the sand plains, or the original sand plains. This probably was once sand plains up here, but it's been developed and farmed and all kinds of things. This is for setting up the 2,300 foot long section. It'll be done like in 3 pipe strings, I believe. And the sand plains, it's like, what's that? I didn't know really about sand plains until this project, but it's an ecological environment in the Burlington, Essex, Colchester area. It consists of sands, as you'd expect in sand plains, silts and clay strata deposited during the recent glacial and post-glacial activities, things that happen around the lower Winooski River Valley. And of course, during some of the glacial periods, the water was backed up in the lake, and the lake was a lot different and higher. And like, remember that there's a whale that was discovered in Charlotte. In case you don't know, there's a whale, I think it was probably 50 years ago or something, and maybe during construction of the railroad or something. It was right near the crossing, right near the crossing there on Thompson's Point Road, I know. there's a sign, there's a plaque there and everything. How they, at some point, they discovered it when they excavated in some old soils and saw a whale, which is whale. This is, freshwater area, but at that time, when the glaciers backed up some of the water, and also when the glaciers loaded the ground, they pressed it down all the way to the glaciers, crushed the ground and squeezed it down. So until it rebounded, there was salt water in here. So there's a lot of dynamics that happen with these river valleys, like the Winooski River Valley, and it's special now because it has unique botanical and wildlife habitat. And unfortunately, much of the area was developed, so now they're working extra hard to protect what's left. So we're drilling around that, and the Indian Brook runs through this whole area. It runs, I guess it runs to the lake, must come off from Indian Brook Reservoir somehow. I can't picture where it would cross Route 2A, but Route 2A is off to the right. Okay, Matt, you're going to talk about aerial lifts, right?
Yes.
I just had a couple basic things, an older blog I just reviewed and freshened up. It's all about planning. It's really just on everything. It's all about planning, and I'm just identifying in here that you want to select the appropriate size for the required terrain. Prepare a firm level platform when required in advance before it gets there. Part of your planning. Bring the proper PPE, including your fall protection, and operators should be properly trained. So,
Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
We're doing more and more unique style work where we're seeing a lot more aerial lifts on our job sites. Aerial lifts is one of those kind of crossover pieces of equipment, much like our forklift, where we need to have training, documentation of training. So it's one of these tools we've been doing a lot of renting, and we rent them for a job site, and then we're just not quite following through with all the proper training that you need to operate an aerial lift. So I just kind of go over some of the basic requirements. One is training. You also need to be authorized to operate an aerial lift. We got to have inspections being done, always having either chocks or setting the brakes. We do have a boom and basket truck. I'll quickly get into that as well, but also the basket load of the aerial lift itself. Fall protection requirements for an aerial lift, and then working inside the basket. Some of the major kind of catch-all when OSHA compliance officers are getting a lot of companies while working outside the baskets. So trained, we need to have this training, and this training that we're doing today will kind of get you through to operate an aerial lift, but it's just the hazard recognition. The hazard recognition is just your surroundings. So an aerial lift, again, we have to also make sure that we're not operating this thing too close to overhead power lines. Okay, we need to make sure we're always staying 10 feet away with an aerial lift with overhead power. What's your grade of slope? Where are you trying to position this thing? We always want to try to keep our aerial lifts level, on level ground as much as possible. And just how much movement we're going to have around you. The biggest hazards with aerial lifts, again, is falling out of the basket or actually working it outside its parameters and tipping an aerial lift over, working on uneven balance, having the basket overloaded, extending way too far out, and moving while you're doing all that operation. It creates very unsafe condition. And that's why they have the alarms. So when this alarm's going off, it's constantly beeping at you. It's telling you that you're probably not level and you're in danger of a tip over. Working loads, each basket, all depends on the size of the machine, has a different working load limit to the basket. And that should not be exceeded. Same thing with our cranes and our rigging. So it says usually it's 500 pounds. We want to make sure that if we have 2 men in a basket, we don't develop a lot of construction material in that basket as well, because we could overload that. And again, you stand real far out, there's a chance for a tip over. The inspection requirement is just making sure all the tools, all the controls, backup alarms, everything's working properly. We don't own an aerial lift yet. I don't know if we ever will. But we just need to make sure that we're holding, we're renting from ESE or Essex equipment, that the inspections are good when this machine shows up, that it's in good working order, the backup alarms are working, there's no malfunction controls, because again, we could be hit with a citation there because of not doing proper citation or inspections of our equipment. And then just making sure you're working in a safe operation. Again, if you haven't been on an aerial lift and you don't really know how to operate it, tell your foreman that so we can get you some training on some flatter ground or put more experienced worker in an aerial lift. And then the fall protection. Fall protection is for really how we want to have this set up is we want to wear a full body harness with a retractable. That's kind of a positioning device. A retractable will prevent you from falling over. A common failure that some companies do is they'll have a full body harness and a lanyard, and then usually that lanyard is like an 8-foot lanyard. Well, really, an 8-foot lanyard, you need about 18 feet in the air. And a lot of times you operate this at multiple different levels. So with a retractable setup, you are always going to be in compliance with making sure that if something does happen, you get thrown out of that machine, that retractable will keep you inside the basket. So you must be authorized to operate an aerial lift. You actually have to be told that you've gone through the training. A lot of the project managers or you get the safety department involved will just kind of go through quickly a training similar to this, making sure you can identify all the hazards, you know how to operate it. We've kicked the tires in the machine and we've seen you operate, and then you're now authorized to operate an aerial lift. So with inspections, lift controls shall be tested each day prior to use to determine that such controls are in a safe working condition. Check the tires. Some of the tires are all now solid, but if it needs air in them, stuff like that, because again, that could get you off tilt and not on level ground. So make sure we're checking the tires. And again, just proof of documentation, or just throwing in your field book or even on the tailboard under fall protection that you just, hey, we've done our inspection of our aerial lift, we have our fall protection as needed, everything's good with the aerial lift. So setting the brakes, bucket trucks operation, man basket, the brakes shall be set with outriggers are used. They shall be positioned on pads or solid surface. Wheel chock shall be installed before using an aerial lift on an incline, provided they can be safely installed. So that's just some things that's actually in the regulation. In our bucket truck, we need to make sure that we're using the outriggers, and we're chalking the tires too on our white bucket truck that we have. So boom and basket load limits. Boom and basket limits specify the manufacturer shall not exceed, and this must be legible in the piece of equipment and inside the basket. These aerial lifts are set up very much similar to our basic ladders that we use. It pretty much tells you all the safe working practices stickered right in the man basket. Same thing with our ladders on the side of the rails. It tells you all the information you need to know really how to operate an aerial lift. So fall protection, the regulation says body belt, but again, the best practice is a full body harness with a restraint system such as a retractable lanyard. And this excludes scissor lifts. Those are mobile scaffold, and it's in a different standard. So a scissor lift is different, and it's supposed to be mostly for interior work or working on slabs, where an aerial lift is more for uneven terrain, more construction material, working on more dirt and gravels and stuff like that. So working inside the basket, like I said before, employees shall always stay firm on the floor of the basket and shall not sit, climb on the edge of the basket, or use any planks to get yourself higher, or any ladders or anything like that. Those are some of the biggest problems that we see out there is just modifying the baskets, being able to try to reach up a little bit higher, or climbing on the rails, stuff like that. We just cannot do that. Those are just that one item, one unsafe act that could really get us in some trouble with the VOSHA compliance officer. Let's make sure we're always working inside the basket on flat, firm ground. So stay safe working in and around aerial lifts. Same thing. It's just, you're working above someone, so make sure the operators, you're keeping all the people below you from underneath the aerial lift, especially if you're, chipping concrete or anything like that. Last thing we want to do is have any construction debris fall onto workers below. So just kind of make sure you flag the area, or you kind of set up a danger zone underneath your aerial lift as well. So those are all safe working practices that we like to try to keep continuing to do as we're getting more and more of this overhead work, crane work, concrete abutment work. It's been more and more on the regular, and we're using more and more aerial lifts. So we just wanted to get this training out there to some of the new hires, and it's a good refresher because it's been over about a year since we've done this. So it's a good, handy tool, but we just got to make sure we follow the proper protocols while using an aerial lift. Is there any questions? Well, thanks for your time. Let's have a safe day today.
On the aerial lift we have at Rygate, it's a quad track setup too.
That's a nice setup.
Which is really nice because certainly you don't work on uneven ground, but often you have to travel over it with the machine to get to your work surface. And with the 4-wheel setup, they tend to get stuck in tires. It's not like the Rubicon. I can just put it in, lock out everything. So the tracks really, with the long surface on the ground, add a lot of better traction to get around. One thing to consider if we're renting.
That's true.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. Let's see here. Pile of checks. Gene, how would you like to help me?
Thank you. Hot lumber.
That's up.
Sure. All right. All right.